The Arabian Racehorse Podcast with Debbie Burt and Gary Capel.
Welcome to another edition of the Arabian Racing Podcast with me, Debbie Burt and Gary Capewell. How are you, Gary?
Very good, thank you. Yourself?
Yeah, not so bad, not so bad. Been a busy weekend of racing last weekend for me, 2 days at Cheltenham, which was quite wet, but it was nice to get back to the jump racing here. My not been many places this week. Looking forward to going to Wolverhampton, obviously, on Saturday. What have you been up to?
Mainly studio-based work this week, and it's German commentaries this weekend. Halle and Dortmund tomorrow, and Munich on Sunday. So that'll keep me entertained. I think it's pretty much all day tomorrow, and then it's a 9:50 start on Sunday.
Oh, keeping you busy anyway.
But an early finish, thankfully.
Yeah, not the same for me at Wolverhampton on Saturday, I don't think. But anyway, we've got a 10 race card there, including our Arabian race. So if we just look back now at last week's race, the Emirates Breeders Novice Stakes, that was run over just short of a mile and 2 furlongs. And we saw a very impressive win from Al Shamik there.
We did, considering this horse is only 3. There was a lot to like about his debut effort for a start, where the penny kind of dropped late on and he finished strongly, but he was a lot more professional, wasn't he, throughout the early stages of the race last week. And to carry a penalty and beat older horses as he did, and not just beat them hollow, really, let's be honest. He's absolutely obliterated them. To win by 5.5 lengths. Very, very strong through the line. He's well above average, I think, and it'd be interesting to see what happens or what the plan is with him next. But for me, as I say, he definitely looks above average, and it's nice to see Jessica Quinlan make such a promising start to a training career.
I spoke to Jess Quinlan after the race.
Well done.
Thank you.
2 out of 2 now with him.
Yeah, nice to back up the first one.
Absolutely. And how do you feel the race went? You said you thought he went a little bit soon.
I thought he had the first part of the race went much better than his first run.
Yeah, sure.
He jumped better, he travelled better. Dan said he did come on and off the bridle, but that is him. And then, so I was quietly confident, and then he came round the last bend and kicked for home, and I thought, oh, that might be a bit soon, because normally he needs something to keep him up to his work, but actually once he got a bit of room, he just kept lengthening and the gap kept getting bigger, which is brilliant. So yeah, really delighted with him.
Absolutely. And how have you found your first experiences so far of Arabian racing in the UK?
It was a tough year to come into it, I think, for sure. It was tough to keep owners happy, and it was tough to keep horses sweet. But I've been really lucky with the opportunities, and I've been really lucky with all the help from William Farthen and Arrow in general. They've really steered me in the right direction, and I mean, as far as first year goes, I'm quite delighted with how it's going so far. Hopefully next year's we can improve again.
Absolutely. Well done. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I also spoke to Dan Muscat after the race, but the wind was a bit strong for recording. But I asked him whether he thought the horse would get further, and he said, and as you rightly said, it ran on strongly through the line, and certainly there was probably scope for more. I looked at the times for the race, and he ran that in 2:11.93, which visually very impressive, but actually when you look back through the form, it's kind of on the par with some of our higher rated handicaps we've had there. So probably best not to get too carried away, but at the same time, still a very impressive performance from a young horse. And as you say, for a 3-year-old to carry a penalty against older horses, you have to think that, he'll probably, he's got a bright future ahead of him.
Yeah, I've just been comparing the times, actually, compared to a couple of races that we had at Wolverhampton last year over the same distance when we had starting stalls, because obviously we haven't always had stalls, so comparing times like for like isn't always easy. But in terms of the time, I suppose it was a little bit slower than perhaps some of the handicaps that we've had there in the past. But, they didn't appear to go that quickly early on, which was possibly a factor towards that. But in terms of the overall time, comparing them like for like, yes, on the figures that you will have to, it wasn't as impressive, perhaps as visually it did look. But I'll forgive him that until we see him stepped up in grade. Well, obviously, it's only had the 2 runs now. like I say, I'll stick with the theory that I do think he is well above average, but we'll see what happens in the future.
Absolutely. And of course, it could be a different matter when we see him on turf. One horse, I think, which obviously in that race will be better back on turf is Loire. I think, probably didn't run to her best form there. And it was interesting that when I spoke to Phil Collington, he did say that you'll probably see a better horse back on turf.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think she travelled very well into the race. Just wasn't able to quicken as well as the winner, who may well turn out to be a bit of an all-weather specialist. We'll see. But I don't think Lou Loire will have too many problems winning a race or two. She goes through her races in a very likeable manner. As I say, she was just unable to quicken perhaps on the surface. And if Phil says that she's going to be better on turf, then I'm happy to go with that.
Absolutely, and of course, Phil's other runner who pretty much ran above expectations, I think it's fair to say, was Durga Mathba. Now, to be fair, his dam had run well. I think she was placed in the staying race on Dubai Day. So you would expect an improvement for stepping up in trip. But I have to say, in the paddock beforehand, I really felt he'd come on quite considerably from when I last saw him race at Wolverhampton. So possibly not so much of a surprise. He's obviously just coming into himself. And of course, he's also a younger horse.
Yeah, still only a 3-year-old, and he showed his bit of an experience at the start, really, didn't he, when he was a little bit slowly away and held up at the back of the field. But he made good headway heading out of the back straight, and was the only one. Well, he never really looked like getting to Al Shamik, but he and Lou Loire pulled well clear of the remainder as well, who, again, one or two of them got outpaced, leaving the back straight before running on. The likes of Satam, Two Founder Crow, who didn't get the best of runs through, and Al Mutasala, who was quite slowly away and never really looked like threatening. But it was a nice enough introduction without getting carried away for that horse. But yeah, quite a few of them just weren't able to quicken with the leading group, and in the end, the winner was well clear. But the second and third claim nicely cleared the remainder as well.
Absolutely. And if we now look ahead to our forthcoming race, which is the Royal Cavalry Marne Handicap Stakes, which is a 0-75, which is to be run over a mile and 4 furlongs. Quite a competitive field, but certainly a mixed bag there in some respects.
Yeah, very much so. Obviously, we've got £35 in terms of ratings between top and bottom. So the bottom horse, or a couple of them, are out of the weights a little bit. But yeah, it's nice to see another race, Phil. It's that horses that have been, particularly in Kayak's case, this kind of trip is definitely the right sort of trip for him. And obviously, he ran in the 0-105 last time out. Obviously, he's back down in grade here in a race that, technically speaking, at the weights, he should have more of a chance in.
Absolutely. And if we go back up to the top there, obviously, probably Algali and Jinan are the most unexposed horses in the race. Jinan certainly probably looks like she's going forward. And of course, her full sister, Salima, excelled at staying trips and obviously also won here.
Yeah, won here a couple of times, I think, didn't she? So we know that the track should be fine. Well, we've seen the track's going to be fine for her. And she's gradually progressed with each start. I think she's probably been a little bit slow to hand, but it's nice to see that gradual progression with each start to date. Obviously, she finished fourth here last time out in a higher grade of race than this. Coming back down in grade here will definitely be a plus for her. And like I say, I just about made her my selection coming into the contest. Obviously, Shakamdan's well represented, as he often is this season. He's got 4 in there. Algali, who you mentioned, who's got blinkers on for the first time. He was second here on his seasonal return. On his second run this campaign on his handicap debut. Almonte up at the top, who was third here on his seasonal debut. Obviously, behind him. Algali did have the benefit of race fitness, so whether that form might well be reversed, it'll be interesting. And we spoke about Almonte on a previous show that I think Phil's maybe got to the bottom of him because he had been a little bit disappointing. I think it's fair to say. Maurid, well, if he goes in okay, he might run all right, but he has an issue with the stalls. We know that, so that would be the concern with him. And Alwyn fought to beat a few of these here last time out, albeit over a shorter trip. Obviously, the likes of Jumana Athbar, Altabari, and Bin Al-Ri were in behind that day, but they all step up in trip here, which should suit most of them on their pedigrees as well. And the other two down at the bottom, Mulan, who we know likes the artificial surfaces. This is his first run for a while, though. Her first run for a while, though. Hopefully she goes okay. And Canoe right down at the bottom will hopefully improve a little bit as well from what we've seen of that horse thus far, and he's likely to do effective over this trip and back into handicap company.
Absolutely, Gary. And I mean, like you say, Jumana Athbar, picking up from some of the ones down the bottom there, she certainly was running on nicely when she was third to Arwen Forter. And she's certainly one I'd be having another look at in the paddock.
Yeah, that was obviously a seasonal debut as well a fortnight ago, and also a handicap debut as well. She'd obviously had the 2 starts last season, and obviously quite a late foal, I think, wasn't she? So she's always had a bit of catching up to do. But that was a lot more like it last time out. And Joey Haynes obviously has been booked to ride for Peter Hammersley, and he's obviously had a great association with the buyer Athbar, and that was the victory a couple of times. So he's getting more and more experience on the breed of horse as well, which certainly isn't a bad thing.
Absolutely, Gary, and certainly someone who's had a lot of experience on Arabians is Ellie McKenzie. She takes a ride on Mulan, and she sent us this message earlier this week talking about her riding experiences with Arrow and since she's turned professional.
My name is Ellie McKenzie. I've recently enjoyed riding my 20th winner under rules, dropping my claim down from 7 to 5. This is a huge achievement for me, although it's felt like a long time coming due to the fact that I've ridden a further 14 winners on Arabian horses. Arab racing is where I started and has taught me a great deal in the art of race riding. Furthermore, I wouldn't have been granted my professional licence without the experience that I've had on Arab, so I owe the sport a great deal. I've been extremely fortunate to ride for some prolific owners on Arabian horses, not least the Royal Cavalry of Oman, who've given me my biggest winner to date on board Riam in a 7-furlong Group 2 contest at Newbury on Dubai Day in 2017. This contributed to me winning the Novice Rider Championship that year. It was my best year to date. I've enjoyed continued support from the Royal Cavalry since then and partnered many winners for them each season. And alongside the opportunities they've given me, the Royal Cavalry have continued to support Arabian racing in the UK for many years, not just by competing horses, but also sponsoring several meetings a year. I'm looking forward to riding in a race that's sponsored by the Royal Cavalry of Oman this Saturday aboard Mulan for Gavin Kelly and Caitlin Robinson. She's a lovely, genuine little mare, and I'm hoping for a big run from her from a good draw over a trip that I think will suit her.
And so that brings to the end of another podcast. Our next meeting after that will be our first trip to Chelmsford City. We have the Bailey's Horse Feeds Novice Stakes there, which will be run over 7 furlongs. So it'll be interesting to see another novice race, don't you think, Gary?
Yeah, very much so. Obviously, those type of races thus far have filled quite well, and I think there'll be plenty of horses that will probably enter and take the engagement up in that particular contest. So, yeah, it should be a fascinating race.
Absolutely. Okay, well, thanks very much, Gary, and I look forward to speaking with you next week.